What is up, dudes and lady dudes? Welcome back to Just Nuts, guys. Today I've got another deck profile for you. This time we're looking back at TRAPTRIX. This is a deck I've profiled a couple times before on this channel, but we just got our Eternity Code support and we are in a newish format, so I figure why not a better time to throw out the TRAPTRIX stuff. We got I'd say two really important cards. The other one's like whatever. I guess they all matter, but they're not like, one is like particularly important in the deck now, but the other two we still play. They're nice. They're nice little buffs, right? So without further ado, I don't think we need to waste too much time. Let's get into this deck profile, all right? Starting off with our monsters, as always, you've got the super standard lineup: 3 copies of Myrmeleo, 3 copies of Mantis, and 3 copies of Dionea. This really doesn't seem to change much as of late. I mean, you usually max out on these. I guess there's an argument for playing only 8 and taking out the Dionea, but looking at the math of it, if you play 10 copies of TRAPTRIX monsters instead of 9, you have like a 4% chance increase of like seeing one in an opening hand, but you also have like a 4% chance like increase in terms of seeing 2 or more in an opening hand, which you really don't want to do ever, is see 2 in your hand. I mean, like, it's gonna happen, but you want to like not let it happen as much as possible. So this is where we end up here. If you don't know what they do, real quick, on normal summon, Mantis or Myrmeleo gets you an add of a trap hole card, and on special summon it pops a back row. That's a mandatory effect. We'll talk about how that matters later. Mantis on normal summon adds another TRAPTRIX monster. You're almost always adding Dionea, as well as the fact it has a quick effect to target a set back row you have, bounce it to your hand, and then you can choose to reset a trap or not. Another spell or trap from hand if you want. And then you also have Dionea. On normal summon, it reborns a TRAPTRIX monster that's level 4 or lower, or actually not level 4 or lower, just a TRAPTRIX monster in defense position, as well as when it's special summon, you can reset a trap hole back from the grave, but if you haven't used it by the end of your next turn, it will be sent to the grave, or will be banished, I believe, actually. So those are them. They're all great. They all plus you in some way, and that's why we play them. 10, just 2, it's just like, it's not as worth for the extra chance of drawing them, because you're going to draw multiples more often, and 8 just felt a little bit less, especially with the extenders we have, because the extenders we have in the deck, you really want to see them with the TRAPTRIX monsters. Speaking of which, like probably the new best extender in the deck, Parallel Exceed. This card is insane in this deck, so incredibly good. All you have to do is see it with one of like 17 cards of the deck, and yes, I know I only showed you 9 of those, but incredibly consistent, and just without even using your normal summon, it gets you to a rank 4 for free, which is really, really awesome. So Parallel Exceed at 3, gotta play. It's just too good an extender. That's the most important card from Eternity Code, in my opinion, for this deck. And then for the other actual monsters, we play one artifact Scythe and 1 artifact Moraltac. Yeah, there's not really much to say about here. We are playing the artifact engine. I think it's too good. I mean, we're playing 3 TRAPTRIX already, and I wanted another power. Like, I wanted a good power trap to like be able to consistently go into. Obviously, drawing these is not the best, but it is what it is. You got it. Like, every deck needs to play bricks, because you trade bricks for power. You trade a little hit of a consistency in terms of possibly drawing these for like the amount of power that scything somebody gives you. So worth it, in my opinion. Some people don't like Moraltac. I've always been a big fan of Moraltac, actually. It's just so good, and it makes it so if you're only playing the Scythe, all you have to do is draw the Scythe, and you're into all your sanctums are dead for the entire duel. Like, terrible, right? This way you can still draw Scythe or a Moraltac and still have one or the other live, because even if you draw the Scythe but plus sanctum, still being able to Moraltac your opponent is actually still a pretty good disruption there. So that is it for those. And then as far as the hand traps go, we've got 3 copies of Ash Blossom and Joy Spring, 2 copies of Effect Veiler, and 2 copies of Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit. So particularly pertaining to the format we are currently in, there's a lot of combo. Both the 2 most represented decks kind of just want to go combo on you, and so that's the main reason that I am playing all of these. Ash just because it's the most generic, Veiler because it's good, and Ogre kind of because I just didn't want to play 3 Veiler and only 1 Ogre. It just felt weird. I think there are multiple hand traps you can sub in instead of the Ghost Ogre if you wanted to. I thought about DD Crow. You could play Nibiru, but the problem with Nibiru is if you go first, you really never want to tribute your whole board with Nibiru. Your whole board is about like maintaining Sarah and just like continuing to rotate a ton of advantage off of her, and tributing her with like Nibiru is so counterproductive. So I feel like in that way it's just like not the best in the deck, but still going second it's really powerful. So I still know there's an argument for it. It's just not my personal style. I'd probably side it. And then I guess what? We already play impermanence, so I'm not worried about that. So yeah, like you could just play multiple other hand traps instead. We're playing these with the impermanence of 10 hand traps total. We're really just not trying to lose the die roll and then just game one just auto lose to either Eldritch going synchro combo or Adamantipator, just setting up like a full board that they do. So yeah, hand traps definitely necessary. And the one thing I like about playing more hand traps in this build than I ever have in the past is in the past, all of your boards are always just like set a bunch of cards. And so post siding, your opponents are always siding in just like lightning storms and evenly matched. They're trying to blow you out with single cards that just essentially neutralize the entire board state and just essentially lose the duel after one resolution, right? So what I like about these is that like you can end on boards where you're just like, you end on Sarah plus like 1 to 2 back row. And I'm like, that doesn't straight up lose. That doesn't just lose to like evenly matched. That doesn't just lose to Lightning Storm, especially depending on what those back row are. But if you have extra disruptions in hand, you can still grind out those duels really, really well. So that's why I like playing the hand traps. Like I said, you could swap Ogre if you wanted to, but for me, I'm just opting for Ogre at this point in time because, I don't know, I just think it's better generically than DD Crow versus like Rogue. So, yeah. All right, coming up to the traps, though, is literally 0 spells in the deck because it's TRAPTRIX, so not too surprising there. 3 copies of TRAPTRIX itself. This card is insane. I'm telling people, listen, this is just my belief. I believe TRAPTRIX is the best normal trap card in the game. Like, I think there are arguments for, like, imperm or evenly matched to rival this card, but I still believe this one is better, because obviously, like, getting him, like, evenly or imperm off this isn't the greatest thing in the world, but this card is just, its versatility is equal to whatever normal trap you can play in your deck at 2 or more copies, and its power is the same as whatever any normal trap you could play at more than 2 in this deck, and so that is why I believe this card is like the best trap in the game. It's insane. You play it at 3 in this deck. I don't think there's any questions asked. I talked about this in my last video. I think some people shy away from playing 3 because, ooh, it locks the rest of your traps the rest of the turn. Doesn't matter if you Sanctum your opponent, and that's why and that's why it's insane. Speaking of which, 3 Sanctum, 3 Shade Brigandine, 3 Compulse. These are our main utility traps for TRAPTRIX. Obviously, you're trying to Sanctum your opponent first and foremost, just because locking your opponent out of the extra deck means they probably do nothing with their turn. There are other cases, of course. Eldritch can still work. Eldritch is a really tough matchup, by the way. Stuff like Altergeist, Subterrors, Sky Strikers. So, well, Sky Strikers can still do stuff given certain hands, but you know, any combo deck like Adamantipator just like passes if you hit him with the Scythe. So that's done. Shade Brigandine, also a really nasty like extender in the deck, just because it gives Sarah her effect to special summon from the deck and then get a free trap for free. So that's bomb as hell as well. And then we have our 3 Compulses. This is just great. I just want a utility card. One of the bigger weaknesses of the deck, it still remains, is when your opponent just goes normal summon something bigger than 800 and go directly into battle phase. They try and clear Sarah without giving you a chance, without putting a monster out that you really feel comfortable wasting a trap hole on, but also like and then just trying to walk over your Sarah so that you don't get a chance to do it, or at least bait something out. And so this is there for that, as well as just a nice impactful card. Let them go into a bigger monster and then just get it away. Let them commit resources into an extra monster and just gone. Really strong card. I really like Impermanence. I liked it last format. I still like it this format. I don't think it's as good just because of like Eldritch, but Eldritch is already a tough matchup. Like you kind of just have to side for Eldritch. I don't think playing something slightly better versus Eldritch instead of Compulse would like really sway the tide in that matchup that much. I think you just got to side what you can to try and like, you know, neutralize the matchup. Of course, like I said earlier, 3 Imperm, match these with your other 7 hand traps. You've got 10 in the main. Which makes me feel pretty comfortable going second versus decks, like, I'm not gonna lie. And then we get to our trap holes, the last part of the deck. We've got 2 copies of Gravedigger Trap Hole. I only have 1. I have another one coming, but I just don't have it yet. 1 time space trap hole and 1 bottomless trap hole. So this is something that is another thing that's like kind of debatable with the deck. I've seen people that really like floodgate trap hole. I've never been the biggest fan of it in this deck. The main reason being is that like this deck is not the best at like amounting like a big offensive push sometimes, and so like flipping a monster down that just like is stuck there, a lot of times you just struggle to like close out a game, and I'm just like not trying to have that be as big of a problem. And I like Gravedigger, sorry, bottomless, because it's really nicer in the Eldritch matchup, and it's just really generic. When you make Rafflesia, this card could just be so generic to just like pop something on summon and banish it. So like you pop a Block Dragon on summon and banish it. It misses timing to ever get its search effect. You hit a Boiiiii Savage on summon, and it has to add it has to equip the Link monster, before it's ever able to negate it. So like really good versus that stuff. Just nice and generic. Time Space Trap Hole, again, kind of generic, but like just good. I mean, just if they go into the extra, shuffle it back. If they summon from hand, which could be Eldritch, by the way, shuffle it back, which is better. We just don't want Eldritch going to the graveyard. You want to force them to use more Scarlet Sanguines to get him out again, and then just keep attempting to like neutralize him, and that's the whole idea there. And this is just the best one in my opinion. You're seeing it. There's going to be hand traps activated, a ton of stuff and I think one of this is fine. I just personally wanted to play two. I could have played one of this and one Floodgate, but I just personally wanted to have access to this at all times. I don't want to draw my only copy of it and not be able to like use Rafflesia to get it like later on in the duel. So that is why I chose that. 40 card main, not messing around. I never mess around with decks that just like don't have ways to like crazy easily search their monsters. Like we kind of just want to see one of these 9, so I'm not really risking going above 40 in the list. That is that. Then we move to our extra deck here, starting off plain and simple, 3 Sarah. Honestly, I think there's an argument that like you don't need 3 Sarah, but you absolutely have to play 2. I think there is an argument though that you don't absolutely have to play 3. So I definitely wavered on that. I just didn't really have anything that I was like, oh, I have to play and I don't have room, so I got to take out the Sarah. If there was something that arose like that, then maybe I would consider it. But for now, 3 Sarah. 1 Link Spider and 1 Salamangreat Almirage. These are really important in the deck for a very specific reason, is because it makes hands that are like completely god-awful, dead, terrible, actually like not the worst. And what I mean by that is if you open Parallel Exceed, but no TRAPTRIX monster, you would normally think he's dead. But by playing these, they literally just unlock all of those hands. Because now, if you don't see a TRAPTRIX monster, all you have to do is see Parallel Exceed with any of your hand traps, because they're all less than 1,000 attacks. So you can just normal summon them and link them right into your Almirage. Or you just need to open it with Shade Brigandine. So you can just use Shade Brigandine's effect, summon it, link it off for Link Spider, and there you go. He gives you a downward arrow, you summon Parallel Exceed. So I know it's not the greatest thing, because you're like, oh, but like you're wasting a hand trap. Right, I get that. But like, would you rather just like have a dead Parallel Exceed in hand that like may not even be live next turn, and 1 Ash Blossom, or would you rather end like Link, or would you rather end Salamangreat Almirage Rafflesia with you know, actual board presence? Without board presence, this deck is nothing. And just getting into Rafflesia means like you may be able to stun your opponent on their turn, and then on your next turn, that is a monster that can just link into Sarah if you still have Trap to activate and get your engine rolling again via that way. So I just felt like those are like such more, I don't know, better plays going first that just like I felt confident in, and these, just playing these 2 in the extra deck and a deck that isn't super tight allowed you to like make those hands workable. Whoa, I put that on the wrong side. There we go. For some other links, 1 Also the Earth Charmer. The entire archetype's Earth. Sometimes you just want to beat her. Also, she floats. She can summon something from your opponent's graveyard that's Earth, which is pretty cool. And if she floats, she literally, if she's destroyed, she searches any TRAPTRIX monster in the entire deck. So that's pretty dope. 1 Phoenix, 1 Unicorn, and I have Avermax here. Honestly, I just don't have my Boral Sword because Mike has it. So this would probably be Boral Sword before Avermax, but honestly, this would be Access Code Talker before it'd be Boral Sword, because 1 Access Code Talker only takes 2 monsters, so you could just take 2 Link 2s into it, which is pretty nice, or like a Unicorn and a Sarah or something. Whereas like Boral Sword needs 3, so that's like really nice. It's just insane because like you automatically put Sarah in the graveyard just like so easily, and if you're going into Access Code, you're probably putting also a Phoenix or a Unicorn or a Asa, whatever. Like probably at least 2 pops worth. So in my opinion, I think like Access Code's probably the best one to play. It's just really expensive. I don't have one yet. But for now, I'd probably play Boral Sword. I just don't have mine because Mike's borrowing. And these are just plain and simple. I still play Tornado Dragon, but I still like Phoenix because you can just make Phoenix co-link to Sarah and have that battle protection, which is still really clean. So into that. I thought about Ivy Masquerena. I just still don't have one. And I think it's like fine in the deck, but you just like really don't run into a ton of situations where it's even makeable. So I just didn't prioritize it. Maybe that could be what the 3rd Sarah could be sought for potentially. But then we finish off with our rank 4, starting off with TRAPTRIX Alomarus, TRAPTRIX Rafflesia, Time Thief Redoer, Tornado Dragon, Castel, the Sky Blaster Musketeer, and 1 copy of number 41, Baguska. This is pretty good, and I feel like they all kind of have their own role. They all kind of make sense because they all just do different things in the deck. You start off with the Lorma. She's a great extender nowadays, just getting you a summon of a TRAPTRIX monster. Mainly, it's not the greatest because, like, if you already had enough, like, 2 monsters to make a rank 4, you're like, why go to her? Because then you end up with a rank 4 and a level 4, which means you can't even get into a rank 4 from then on anyway. The idea here is that, like, all of them have effects that, like, well, at least, like, Diana and Mermelio at least have effects that pop off like on summon, and she's a bigger beater than all of them, so sometimes you're just looking for a beater that also still gets you Sarah, and like so she comes up all the time. She's pretty good. She also just like triggers Sarah as well, just a monster effect that gets you a free trap hole, so that works as well. Next up, Rafflesia. If you do any of the combos, you're almost always going Rafflesia because she will always be exactly your 5th summon, which means if your opponent is maining Nibiru, you can just negate it with the Gravedigger's effect, which is really nice. And yeah, it's just good. Like, and even if the Gravediggers doesn't come up, you just hit them with like a time space or a bottomless effect, and that's still like really generically just good, like disruption. So yeah, she's great. And like one other thing is that like usually when people see that you're playing TRAPTRIX, if they have Nibiru in the main, they side it out because they know like they'll see it either like immediately game 1, like if you summon 5 times, Rafflesia is always the 5th summon, or they'll see or they'll be like, oh, it's TRAPTRIX. Like, they just summon twice. They normal summon, they link it to Sarah, and they pass. So they'll just, like, side out the Nibiru. So game 1, this matters. But game 2 or 3, if you run into, a Shade Brigandine combo, I usually like to end Redoer instead. So that's why he's here. If you ever just get to Shade Brigandine, he's technically, I would say, generally better than Rafflesia to go into off of it because it's a little more offensive and it's like has a little more longevity with tagging out and stuff. But, yeah, to play it safe, game 1, I'm always making Rafflesia. Then we have Tornado Dragon, just great spot removal, as well as like if you draw your artifacts, you can pop them on your opponent's turn, which is pretty cool. So that's another way to like get things done if you draw an artifact, but you also just draw a way to get to a rank 4 game 1. So Paralux Seed or Shade, you can still get into that. Castel, just generic monster removal. I wanted just like, this is a 2 monster makeable like card that can just like spot remove any face-up card, which is really nice, and it just gets it back into the deck. That's the other thing. Doesn't destroy, so like I thought about Light Dragon adding Nister, but because it destroys, I kind of faded away from that, and I just like the genericism of this. Like, Tornado Dragon's great, and it's better than Phoenix, barring the battle protection that Phoenix gives Sarah, but this guy, in my opinion, was just like better than any of the other rank 4s, in my opinion, because you're just like a Golden Lord back into the deck. You don't want to like equip with Silent Honor Arc, because if they ever out the Silent Honor Arc, they get the Golden Lord back in grave, not back into the deck. So there's that. And then Baguska. Sometimes you just have situations where you have 2 monsters and you need just like something that's like a bigger body and just kind of like stuns your opponent out, and maybe you've gone through the wrong amount of like trap holes, so like Rafflesia doesn't work, or maybe you've already just gone through Rafflesia and you still need to like go into just like a defensive card. There's him. I thought about Giant Hand because Giant Hand's kind of just like a walking impermanence, but I felt like Baguska was generally going to be better in those situations. And so yeah, those are my rank 4 package and my deck profile for TRAPTRIX. Post-Eternity Code in the new format with Eldritch and Adamancipator running it. I honestly think this deck has a pretty good Eldritch match, or not Eldritch, Adamancipator matchup. Unfortunately, the Eldritch matchup is pretty bad. I mean, you stop their combo and then they just like Eldritch stall you. It's tough. One thing that is nice is that if you can get into Sarah is just unaffected by Conquistador, so they can't just like Conquistador pop Sarah, so that sometimes they can just struggle to get around it without just like having to try and beat over it. And yeah, they're kind of stuck with like either using the Lord himself or Hakera, so like sometimes you can work around that and like defend from those. But yeah, these are great, honestly. I love the deck. I think the deck's actually pretty good. It's a cool rogue option. I think not nearly enough players play it for the power level that this deck has, in my opinion. And if you're interested, definitely try it. It's a pretty cheap deck, honestly, other than like a couple new cards maybe. Like not, I guess like the Gravediggers, traps, like hand traps can be cheap. Sanctum's a little high, but hopefully that will get a reprint soon. Impermanence, like there's a couple things that are a little bit like expensive, but those are already like kind of staples, so hopefully a lot of players already have those. So yeah, All right, that's all I'm saying. I think this deck is better than what any representation it has, because it really just doesn't have much, because people just don't play it, and I think more people should, especially if they like control style decks. So that's pretty much it for me here, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video, as always. And of course, as always, let me know your thoughts on the list. If you have any suggestions for the format, any other tidbits you want to throw in, any opinions on the deck, definitely let me know those down in the comments below. And I will see you in the next video. Okay. Peace.